stimulus that the market seemed to react to in some way, shape or form, on the margin at least. So treasuries positive, yields go lower, the dollar weakens as well. So we'll be catching up with the senior advisor to President-elect Donald Trump, Kellyanne Conway, later on in the programme. Look out for that conversation. Plenty of questions about why we haven't got much detail on what's set to come in 2017. Beyond that, Francine, I'm looking at an FX market with a stronger Swissy and a weaker dollar. Dollar Swissy getting back towards parity and making Tom Keen's martini a little bit more expensive at the piano bar next week.
Yeah, he's detoxing, John.
I'm detoxing.
There you go. You're detoxing. Kale juice, John.
At least till Zurich.
Jonathan Farrow there. Now, U.S. banks are expected to post the biggest fourth-quarter earnings increase. That's what we're talking about, and it's the fourth-quarter trading haul since the financial crisis. They're getting a boost from a surge in bond trading on the back of the election of Donald Trump. Now, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Chase, and Wells Fargo release fourth-quarter earnings tomorrow. And Bloomberg's bank analyst, he's our bank reporter. He's actually head of our finance team. He's Michael Moore, and he joins us now from London. Also with us, HSBC Stephen King and Jonathan Loynes, Capital Economics chief economist. Michael, good of you to join us. When you look at deregulation, when you look at business models, you know that interest rates are going up in the U.S. So is it a win-win for U.S. banks?
Well, they certainly have a lot more optimism surrounding them, and you're seeing that in the stock prices. You typically see trading kind of limp into the end of the year in the fourth quarter, but you actually had a strong surge last quarter. Whether or not that will carry over to the first quarter is kind of the big question, because for the full year, it really wasn't a tremendous year. It just picked up in the second half. So whether we can see that momentum kind of follow through will be the big question.
Michael, give me a sense of what regulation or deregulation we're expecting for the U.S. and will it automatically mean a win for U.S. banks compared to UK, Swiss and European banks?
Right. I mean, at this point, it's more about the tone so far. As you and John were talking about, so far hasn't been a lot of detail, on a number of issues. But certainly on banking regulation, there hasn't been, well, we're going to repeal this or take that back. But there seems to be a tone of less regulation, perhaps a scaling back of the Volcker rule. And that will help the U.S. banks. And even if you don't get repealing, just the absence of additional regulations may help as well.
Michael, if you look at J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, with all the troubles they've had, the distractions at Bank of America, and then Citigroup, you still have there's two worlds of American banking. You've got those that succeeded and those that are still really struggling. Over on the right side of this chart, bring it up, Anthony. You can barely see it, but in the upper right corner, that white line in a too busy chart is the massive Trump reflation play with James Dimon. They've gotten all the gain of the reflation. When do the other banks catch up? It's got to be now or never, right?
Right. We've been waiting for a few years. I mean, J.P. Morgan grabbed so much market share, especially on the investment banking and trading side, immediately after the crisis. We've been waiting for those other banks to catch up. And they've done it on some measures, but still J.P. Morgan seems to be the dominant bank in the U.S. world. So I think you may start to see that spread out a little bit. But I think each bank has to kind of show what it's good at, and J.P. Morgan in the trading world has been pretty dominant.
I promise tomorrow I'm going to do a better chart on that shows more clearly how J.P. Morgan has benefited from the Trump reflation trade more than the other banks. Michael Moore, as always, get to work on those bank earnings tomorrow. Michael Moore with all of our banking worldwide out of our London News Bureau. On radio and Bloomberg Television today, we will speak with Michael Mayo of CLSA, particularly his thoughts on the leadership of the major U.S. banks. Look for that in the 9 o'clock hour. We come back with Stephen King and Jonathan Loynes here in London. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.